Alright, we've got ourselves a Macbook 2338, which is the Pro version of the M1 series. Apparently there was some work done on this, and then when a customer plugged their SSD in, it went and died and no more. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. Maybe blown out USB-C ports. I see we've got some damage here on the screen. That's no good. Let's see what we get if we do plug in anyway. 5 volts, 100. It's not really dancing anywhere. Try the other port. Or is that the same port? It looks the same either way. Alright. Disconnect the bat. Well, that doesn't help. You can see the battery connector here has actually been broken off on an arm. Now, to be fair, this happens all too often. It's very easy. I swear the connectors are just made that way that they will break the moment you even look at them. So I definitely can't blame the customer on that one, which is my way of kind of saying I've done it too. Okay, with the battery plugged in, it doesn't make any difference. Oh wait, we've got 20. Okay, here's a bit of a problem. This is a third-party battery, and with third-party batteries, they will continue to supply voltage even when this data line is not connected. It's a real problem, particularly if you're used to the MacBook original batteries, the genuine Apple ones, where they shut down as soon as you pull that data cable out. So if you're expecting the power to be removed from the circuitry by pulling the data line, and it's a third-party battery, you can be in for a bad surprise. So I guess the point there is simply always take the screw out of the battery before you commence with any work on the actual measurings or anything like that. First thing we're going to do is look around the USB-C area. That's typically where we're going to see our damage. Right. I'm just having a look over the whole board before I start taking measurements. Oh, sweet. Wow. Okay, well, you really can't blame the tech for this one. That is bug doo-doo, and it's definitely not their fault there. It was just bad coincidence. And sadly, this is a fairly common thing where you can be repairing a machine and it's just by pure bad luck that you happen to be the one that touched it last and it went faulty, but it actually wasn't your fault. It was just horrible coincidence. I mean, look at this. This is definitely not the tech's fault. Beautiful crystalline structures there. So like a horrible mess between organic and inorganic materials there. And that is right next to the BIOS chip. And I'm not quite sure what this chip is here, but that will certainly be a big problem. So we're going to knock off what we can. Okay, I might have to, yeah, I'm going to have to use some water and alcohol mix for this one. I'm just going to be careful. Dry, knock off as much as we can, because the more we can knock off dry, the easier it is for us to brush it off, and the less that gets dissolved into the water alcohol mix to spread around. So take what you can off dry and then go from there. Yeah, so that's much better. This is a good example also of why you should do a visual inspection of the board before you dive in chasing what you think is going to be the fault. Because we were under the impression, based on the presentation records, that we were looking for some sort of shorted fault. In this case, may well have just been purely coincidence. So I dare say a couple of those resistor pads are just going to fall right on off. Yep, there we go, that one. Don't worry, we've got donors. And that one there. So there was no real risk of knocking pads off. I don't use a lot of pressure when I'm testing. You get used to knowing about how much a pad and component can take. Realistically, I am thinking it will be best overall to remove them all and replace them all. That's not really a very pretty sight, that one. There's junk under this chip here, so we need to find out what this chip is. Looking at our board view, Alright, fortunately this chip is just basically a switch. Or actually, no, it's not. Or is it? What are we looking at here? Mossy and clock. Mossy and clock. Oh, okay, this is actually a level translator by the looks of it. And as we can see, yep, it's a translation, voltage level, dual bus transceiver. It's just an unusual package for that sort of purpose, but that is what it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that chip off as well, because there is junk under there. It might not need to be taken off so much, but I want to be sure that it's clear. Can get a little bit difficult to get parts off because we're right near the CPU, so there's a fair amount of thermal mass that we have to fight against. This first application is going to be a mix of water and alcohol, because we want to pick up all the water soluble stuff. If we just use alcohol, it won't do that job, and all that will happen is we'll just end up leaving the contaminant there without cleaning it properly. So we can already see that the pads look a little bit better. I mean, it's certainly not perfect. Let's give them a little bit of a scratch up. Seems like I've broken my tip off. I do get a few people ask me why I continue to use blades for cleaning up this stuff when there's powered diamond tip grinders and things like that. And the answer is I do use those diamond tip grinders for some purposes, but for individual pads like this, particularly when we're dealing with a corroded board situation, I prefer to have the higher degree of dexterity that comes with blade control like this. The other thing is, if I get distracted, bumped, or anything like that with a blade, I'm not going to have to be worried about it plowing through the board in an inappropriate place because I turned my head. So yeah, it's a little bit slower, but I prefer the control. Power tools are definitely very handy and they save a lot of time, but they can also do a lot of damage if you have a slip. It's all a matter of what level of risk do you want to accept. It's really what it comes down to. It's an individual thing, which is why some people will go about doing things that you wouldn't, and then conversely there are things you would do that other people will be like, oh, I'm not going to dare do that. It's your choice. Okay, we're going to unfortunately have to drop some flux down here, make a mess of everything now. These are agreeably terrible cleaning buds, but I have several thousand of them, and I'm just going to keep using them until I've used up all several thousand, and after that I'll get some better ones. There's definitely still damage down there on those pads. Mostly I just want to get the corrosion away. Sometimes if you leave the corrosion there, it can come back. Or worse, what can sometimes happen is if you've soldered over the top of corrosion, you don't realize that you're basically building the foundation of the circuit on a swamp of corrosion. And what will happen is later on it'll just all fall apart. So as you can see, half that pad just disappeared. Let's transplant some resistors back. I'm thinking we might, we'll grab 2 at a time. I was going to say, it'd be nice to grab 4 at once, but I'll probably be pushing my luck. It's Friday. I should be thinking about reliably finishing the day rather than trying some crazy experiments. I mean, grabbing 4 won't be a problem, that's the easy part. Where it gets difficult is when you go to put them on the recipient board. Yeah, what was I saying about Friday troubles? As you can see, good thing I didn't use 4. And yes, I see that we have managed to dislodge that bottom one there. Sometimes you save yourself quite a bit of time from jumping back and forth. Sometimes you do not. Wow, I'm making a right real mess here. Alright, let that be a lesson to you all. Blimey. That was definitely... that's definitely become more protracted than intended. Now just a copy across the level shifter. Oh wow. Right, not my day. Everything's wonky. I do want to try and get that back into place. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. That's our compromise. While that cools down, we'll look around for some more defects. Now, there's no guarantee that that actually is the problem, but yeah, we could still have a... Wow, see how the heat gets all the way up here? That's impressive. Piece of belly button then. I say we give this a whirl and see if we can get 20 volts at least. We'll see whether we're dealing with another fault on top of that one. That's much better. That's better too. We will clean up this area and hopefully that should be it. Unfortunately, of course, it's never going to be as pretty as it was before. I could obviously put this through an ultrasonic cleaner, but I'm not going to do that. We did used to always ultrasonic clean boards after being worked on, but with the newer machines, so like 2017 onwards, we found an ever increasing incidence of failure after ultrasonicking, or intermittent issues after ultrasonicking. And so now the focus tends to be more minimize the amount of flux that gets used, minimize the amount of excessive, board work being done. Just try to aim to be clean at all stages if you can. And then you'll find you really don't need to ultrasonic. The annoying thing is though, when you get this sort of watermark around the perimeter, and of course you have to constantly go bigger and bigger around where you've worked, because what you're trying to do is dilute the amount of flux residue that's been left behind as much as possible. So we're fairly much at the point where we really should consider it acceptable. Now I might go and put some UV cure on those resistors, given that the pads were somewhat damaged. Well, that looks nice and healthy and safe. Right, let's get this thing back to its home. Hopefully it can go home. We're going to do a test with the battery before screwing everything in, just so that we can be sure that it is going to work. No point putting it all together and then finding out, no, it actually doesn't work, and then you have to unscrew everything. So fingers crossed. Looking better. We're gonna win. Okay, just one thing I want to check here, this is why we do more tests, is you'll notice our current is quite low. We're only sitting at about 260, 270 kind of region, but the battery is only at a couple of percent charge. So we're going to give this 10 minutes, see if that charge rate picks up. It's actually quite amazing that this is actually fully running right now, and we're only doing 5 watts of power. So it's quite impressive how little energy these machines are taking now. I have a feeling it's a communications issue, and it may be that connector that we were complaining about. And the reason why this unit continues to remain on power even when I disconnect the plug is because of the fact that it is a third-party battery, so it keeps giving the 20 volts through to the machine. If that was a genuine Apple battery, then as soon as I pulled the USB-C power, it would shut down as well, if it was having a problem with its data flex. So now we have to ascertain, is this a data flex issue, or is it a logic board issue, or is it a battery issue? This is why, even though the repair that we just did was comparatively simple, straightforward, didn't take too long, you still cannot go cutting your prices. Because if you cut your prices, you're not going to be able to cover yourself for when these scenarios happen, and you have to spend extra time on a job after when it should have technically have finished. Yeah, so that doesn't feel right. Let's try that again. It's almost like there's an obstruction in there or something. Could be like a little rock, cat hair. So it feels around about here. There's definitely an obstruction in there, I'm almost certain of it. So we'll take the screw out so the battery is properly disconnected, because this is not a genuine. To be fair, you should do that anyway. We'll try a blast of compressed air. You can actually see on the flex the effect of the fact that there is an obstruction in the third and fourth stripe from the bottom. You can see the discoloration due to the delaminating. Let's see if we had any luck clearing it. It appears not. How to clear this out? Well, not many things that are as thin as a FPC flex. So I'll try this. I have a feeling you're too thick. I'll try our other chip lifter. Yeah, it's definitely a rock or something like that. It's still there on the left. Okay, I think we've ground it to a paste, it seems, because that is sitting even and flush now. Let's see if we're correct. That's looking substantially better. I think nearly 3 amps, quite a bit nicer than merely 130 milliamps. Now we've got a win. Alright, well there we go, another successful fix, thankfully. Learned a couple of things today, or rather reminded of a couple of things. One is, while it's always good to have a history of the device, make sure that you do your own evaluation in a way that isn't necessarily following exclusively what the history of the device has said. In this particular case, it would have been natural to assume that because they plugged the SSD drive in and everything shut down, that we should have had a fault in the USB-C input stage, maybe a blown cap, maybe a blown fuse, something like that. The next thing that we picked up today, of course, and reminded once again, is that make sure you always charge full price for your jobs, because if you don't, you're going to get frustrated and angry when you end up with secondary issues that you have to resolve beyond just the repair that you did. Alright, that's everything for me today. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all next time. Until then, you all take care. I'll catch you later.